I'm Rachel.
And I'm Lauren.
Welcome back to Capital Conversations with Rachel and Lauren.
This week we'll be talking about the everlasting shutdown, Arizona suing the House, and our interview with Congresswoman Ashley Hinson. After that, we'll talk about our lives on the Hill.
Welcome back, everybody. It is day 27 of the shutdown.
Yeah.
And I would like to keep our conversation about the shutdown brief because,
Please.
frankly, I'm just sick of frickin' talking about it. Like, I don't even know what else there is to say. And I keep getting calls from family members being like, is it still happening?
Yeah. And you're probably sick of hearing about it.
Yeah, and you probably don't need us yapping about it because so many other people are doing the same damn thing. But
yeah, my mom almost every morning is like, any movement? No.
No, my mom's like, are you guys changing the world today? I'm like, I sure hope so, but not really. Because I just think that people are just so frustrated. And what we said last episode, the fatigue is really setting in.
Totally.
But I think what happened last episode is there was a lot of fatigue. Everyone was tired. Everyone was exhausted. I feel like last week and heading into this week, there's a lot of just annoyance. I don't even think it's fatigue anymore. I think people are just pissed.
It's coming from everyone.
Yeah.
And, I mean, sitting through the press conferences last week, I feel like they're getting longer each day, which I don't know how that's even possible.
I don't appreciate it either.
Because, one, I'm sitting in these for an hour, I could get up there and give them myself, but also, I don't know if they haven't run out of things to say. They've been saying the same thing for 27 days now. There have been no negotiations. Speaker Johnson and House Minority Leader Jeffries have not physically met with the upper chamber or the president since the Monday before the government shut down. I know that last week Jeffries said that the weekend before him and Johnson had a conversation, but neither one of them would elaborate on that conversation. So we don't know anything about that, which is kind of shocking. I kind of took that as weird. Johnson's team said that that was private, and then Jeffries, it was the last question he was asked at a press conference. He said, we had a conversation on Saturday, immediately turned and walked off. So we didn't get any information on that, but there was seemingly no movement last week from that conversation.
And I just think that there isn't much to say. I think that in these conversations, what we're finding out is that Republicans are digging their heels in the sand. They think that they are right. They think that there's nothing that they can do or say or give to the Democrats to get them on board. And so right now they're kind of just playing this waiting game where they wait to see if Democrats crack under the pressure. And what's kind of interesting about that is that I think in the beginning the parties had a little bit more leeway to be like, you, like putting the pressure on each other.
Yeah.
But I think now as we get closer to November 21st, that's the deadline of this spending deal that they've been trying to pass forever. The problem with that is that time is running out because once they eventually, we hope, fingers crossed, they pass that spending deal.
Yeah.
That is not going to give them a lot of time. You know, if we get to the elections that are happening this year are November 4th. When we get to that date, let's say the government opens on November 5th. That is only 16 days, and a lot of those are weekends, to get to that CR deadline, that spending deal deadline. And they didn't get the appropriations bills passed in the first 7 months of the year, they're certainly not going to do it in 16 days.
Yeah.
And so we sat down with Appropriations Chairman Tom Cole last week, and we brought this to his attention. Not that we needed to, not that he was unaware, but we brought it to his attention, and we were like, what are you going to do when it gets closer to that date? And he expressed, I think, a lot of frustrations about the whole situation.
Yeah. I think that he still expressed confidence, though. I think that something that I find in Appropriations Chairman or Ranking Member with Congresswoman Rosa DeLauro is I feel like every time you ask them about an appropriations process, they are pretty positive about the appropriations process. Like, they really do believe in the process. And I think that Cole was positive in the fact that they were ahead of a typical Congress on where appropriations were when the September 30th deadline came. Like, all 12 had passed out of their committees, which, I mean, I don't even know the last time that had happened before
it's been
the fiscal year came about. But, I mean, like you said, they had set those 7 weeks aside to, work hard and get down, dirty into the details of those top-line numbers for those 12 bills to reach a consensus, not only with Democrats, but also with the upper chamber to reach that 60-vote threshold. And now we are at less than 4 weeks, almost 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And that is definitely not enough time. I think he told us that there are 3 bills that they only need about 48 hours to get to a consensus on, but there's still 9 other bills that need to be negotiated. And they had originally set aside those 7 weeks. And those 7 weeks, I feel like, were already kind of iffy on if they were going to be able to get the appropriations fully done. If they pass said number of bills. It opens up that much of the government. So then we would only have a partial shutdown, even if they would have done that before the 7 weeks. But now it's looking like none of that is really going to happen before the November 21st deadline as of now, because they're not really able to do appropriations as the government is shut down.
And as we've said and as we've heard for weeks now, House Republicans have no interest in coming back to the Hill to work. And so we brought that up as well. We were like, well, why don't you guys come back and start doing it? And Cole said something interesting. He said, well, you can't negotiate against yourself. And I thought that that was an interesting thing because he's kind of right in that sense where Republicans, if they come to the Hill, and Democrats, they have already, and I think on the Appropriations Committee level, they have already kind of, I think, gotten into negotiations on most of these bills.
Yeah.
All of them passed out of committee. So they're ready to go to the floor for a vote. So it's not like the appropriators can come back and negotiate on these bills because they're already done. And so I think that that is where maybe the messaging from Speaker Johnson, I think, in my opinion, would be a little bit more effective when he's answering this question, because he keeps saying, well, the House has done its job. The House has done its job. And I feel like that's not really resonating with people, but I think if he really honed it, and he's done this a couple times, I'll give him credit, but I think if he did it more at where he said, we have the 12 bills ready to be going on the floor, but we need to have conference, House-wide conversations about it, and they can't do that until the government is shut or reopens, because they need to have those conversations while the government is, kicking and going. So I think that right now Cole is optimistic that they can get it done, like we said, but he even admitted that there's going to need to be another spending deal. There's going to be another spending deal, and he thinks maybe end of December, maybe into January. So all the Republicans are aware that these next 3 weeks are kind of just an arguing point, time for them to just go back and forth, because once November 21st hits, there's going to be, they're going to need another spending deal. It's inevitable now.
I think it is notable. He told us in the interview that he didn't want, if the next continuing resolution did go into January, it would be because he doesn't want to jam members at the holidays. That is a major tactic of leadership on both sides. Whenever it comes to not only appropriations, but things like reconciliation, major bills, they really like to get these members in kind of like a sticky situation where it's like, you either stay here, you keep working through the holidays, or you pass it now. And these members,
and they did that last December.
They do it. I mean, if you really look at it, the November 21st deadline of the continuing resolution is jamming them into the Thanksgiving week. And so, like, we are already seeing that with this continuing resolution. And the fact that Cole is, like, looking ahead and not wanting to do that, I think that that might be a tactic that leadership doesn't necessarily want to do. Jamming them before the holidays does work. Like, historically, it does work. We've both covered Congress for a couple years through a couple spending fights. And when they are jammed at the holiday, or like reconciliation, not November 4th, July 4th, they wanted to go home for July 4th and be with their families, and they got it done the day before. And so I think that is definitely a tactic that will be used in the coming months, even though Cole did show hesitation towards jamming members at the holidays. That is a complaint across both chambers and like both parties, but I think that that's like a notable tactic that leadership uses to get done what they want to get done.
Yeah, and I think it will be interesting to see whether leadership does take that cue from Cole or not, because right now Johnson and the Freedom Caucus, who are the more like hardline conservatives, they right now have this peace between the two of them. And I will say it's temporary, because with the flick of a switch, Freedom Caucus can, go off and be done with Johnson. And so I think that would also be something that the Freedom Caucus is not looking forward to. And a lot of those members have said that they want to see a year-long spending deal, like a CR, because they not only want to limit spending, but they don't want to get jammed at the holidays. And so I think that with Speaker Johnson, he's had the Freedom Caucus say, we are 100% behind you, we're ready to go, you have our support. If they try to get these bills across the floor or do a CR until the end of the year, that could potentially be bad for that relationship. And so I think that that's something that leadership really has to think about, because Cole wants this done by the end of the calendar year. He told us that. And a lot of appropriators in the House, in the Senate, have said they don't want to see this go into January. I mean, appropriators hate CRs. They hate CRs. They want to get their process done. They want to go back to regular order. And as you said earlier, Like, they are very proud that they got this far.
Yes.
It hasn't happened. I think I was reading something that the last time that all the bills passed, like all 12, no problems, was in the 90s.
Yeah.
Which is so crazy to think that now we're so many years, so many decades later, and the process just broken down. And so appropriators are fed up. And all 12 of the cardinals, who each chair all of the different bills, basically, all told me that they were not only pissed that the shutdown is happening, they blamed it on Democrats, but they're pissed that they even had to do a CR in the first place.
Yeah.
And so I think that it's just going to be kind of there's going to be a lot of back and forth, especially if we get into end of November, December, trying to appease everybody, because there's a lot of different factions and they're not all going to be happy.
I mean, I do think that obviously having a continuing resolution, whether it be this first one that's short term or a longer one into January or even a year long, is a loss for Republican appropriators, because these are Biden spending levels. These are appropriations bills that were passed during the Biden administration at Biden spending levels. So if they keep this for a year, that backs them up into September, right before the midterms, and that leaves them at Biden spending levels for a lot longer than they ever would have wanted.
Yeah, and they're not exactly loving that idea that they have to go into the midterms potentially with Biden spending levels, because they don't have then any sort of backup to say that they've been trying to do something better, or they've been trying to fix things, they've been trying to reduce waste, fraud, and abuse, other than through reconciliation.
Yeah.
And so that could be really detrimental. No, literally. Like, that would be so detrimental, I think, to Republicans going into a midterms year where Democrats literally need to flip 3 seats.
Yeah.
And then they can have the majority. And then that's crazy, because then we'd be back in a similar, like a different leadership, but similar fight again. It's still slim margins. It will still have appropriations problems. Like, then you have a Democratic House with a Republican Senate and a Republican president. That would be probably even more of a nightmare than I think the trifecta is right now in terms of legislating. Because you would think that with the trifecta, everything is, sunshines and rainbows, and it has proven for months now that it is not.
Yeah, I mean, they're beating every record. Jeffries beat the longest House floor speech. We saw Cory Booker a few months ago beat the longest Senate floor speech.
Yeah.
Senator Ed Markey last week also beat a record. I mean, coming up, this past week, it become the second longest shutdown in history, the first longest full shutdown in history. So even in a trifecta, like this Congress is hitting every record, the longest vote ever held open. So I mean, this, just because it's trifecta doesn't mean that it's running
smoothly.
Smoothly, yes.
Yes. And I think what's so interesting about that is that we are seeing a lot of different precedents being broken or just being altered. We've seen just since I think Trump got into office, and just with the new Congress, we've seen like House rules being eroded. We've seen precedent being kind of bent to the will of leadership. And a lot of people are kind of fed up with the way that the decorum of the House is just kind of fallen apart.
Discharge petitions being used in the majority.
Being used so many times now. And I just think that is a show that this like hyper-partisanship of the House is just breaking it down little by little.
Yeah.
And Cole even spoke to that, and he said that the Appropriations Committee is one of the rare committees where bipartisanship is absolutely necessary. He said in other committees, you can be shirts and skins, which I thought was so funny. Which it's true, though. Like,
he specifically named Oversight and Judiciary, which that is the epitome of shirts and skins whenever it comes to committees. We should pitch that.
We should be like, we have an idea.
But just put Moskowitz and Comer out there.
Oh my God. And who would be shirts and who would be skins?
I don't want to think about that.
Anyway, moving on. But I think that it is just so interesting to me that with all these records being broken, we're also seeing a lot of unprecedented behavior from a lot of different members. And I think the biggest thing happening during the shutdown right now is Adelita Grijalva not being sworn in. And that's something we've talked about a lot. So if you are a recurring viewer, which I hope you are, you know what we're talking about. But in a nutshell, she has not been sworn in. She's the newest soon-to-be member of the Democratic caucus. And so she, her leadership has been asking Johnson to swear her in, her Arizona delegation. She herself is sending letters. Then the Attorney General from Arizona sent a letter to him basically being like, if you don't do this, we're going to sue you. Which everyone was like, no, she won't. Well, then last week, she unveiled a lawsuit against the House of Representatives. And it's from the AG, which is Chris Mays, and then it's from Adelita Grijalva as well, suing the House of Representatives for not swearing her in. And I think that was very interesting, because I don't really recall a time that a member of the House has sued the House. Or like a state has gotten involved in Congress affairs. And that was something that Johnson, when he reacted to the lawsuit, he kind of just laughed and brushed it off. He called it a publicity stunt. He said that the AG just wanted to get, national political party points. But I think it is, he said, like, she has no place here in Washington, like, this is Washington affairs, which I am curious to see this lawsuit play out.
Yeah.
Once the government reopens, Johnson has said he's going to swear her in immediately. So then the lawsuit would probably just be null and void at that point. But also, we don't know how long the shutdown is going to go. So is there going to be any movement on this lawsuit? With just the court systems in general being so slow, I can't imagine that it goes anywhere right now. I don't want to say that it's a publicity stunt, but I think that it is kind of making a point. And so I think we'll have to see if it actually gets evolved into real, legal action.
I think that Johnson is having to message against it and kind of fight for his voice in this issue. We've talked about it multiple times on here. She is going to be the 218th signature on the discharge petition for the full release of the Epstein files after she's sworn in, to force a vote on Congressman Massey and Congressman Ro-Khanna's bill, which essentially just forces the DOJ to release all the files with victims' names redacted. But Johnson did bring in Chairman Comer, who is leading the oversight investigation into the Epstein files, into a press conference last week, which, granted, he's been bringing in a lot of chairmen of a lot of committees, but he brought in Comer to specifically talk about what they're doing on Epstein and being like, look over here, the oversight is doing an investigation onto Epstein, and they're doing a lot, and they released 34,000 documents. They've done interviews. They've done all of this stuff. Don't look over here at Massey and Khanna's bill and the 218th signature on the discharge petition. That means nothing whenever oversight is doing their own investigation. So I do think that Johnson is having to do some damage control during these press conferences on the Epstein issue whenever it does come to Grijalva. So I do think that's, Epstein really hasn't had any movement. It's kind of lost its wind a little bit in all of the government shutdown craziness, but it'll be interesting to see how much that picks back up when the government shutdown ends, and when Congresswoman Adelita Grijalva is sworn in and is that 218th signature, because at that point, Johnson can't do anything to fight the discharge petition like he did previously with Congresswoman Luna, where he just kind of broke a deal with her. That's not going to happen with Congressman Massey.
No, he's just not interested. I think that's just the best way to put it. He's not interested in striking a deal. I think that leadership is also taking kind of a backseat approach in a whatever happens, happens kind of mentality, because while they're saying, look what we're doing over here, oversight, when reporters have asked him directly, you are against this petition, you said you are you going to, whip against it? Are you going to encourage your members not to vote for it? And both Johnson and Whip Emmer told me personally that they're not whipping against it. So when it comes to the floor, it's probably going to pass, because not only
it will pass.
Because not only are there the 4 Republicans who signed on to the petition, but that bill itself has several Republican co-sponsors.
I think it is extremely hard to go on record and vote against the full release of the Epstein files, given that it is, and I would argue that it is majorly an 80-20 issue, and I think when an 80-20 issue comes to the floor, that is a really hard vote to vote against. You saw the backlash that the TikTok vote got. I can't even imagine what this backlash would be like. I talked to a couple members, Republicans that hadn't signed on, and that said that they would be voting for it when it comes to the floor. So I think that if not with a good majority, I think that it could pass with almost flying colors. I wouldn't say 2/3 majority, but with a...
I wouldn't say unanimous either.
No,
I think there's definitely not enough.
No.
I think you'll get every Democrat voting for it. I think it's the Republican
sure. Every Democrat is signed on, so it would be crazy if not. But I do think that a very large handful of Republicans that didn't sign on will vote for it.
And it'll span the kind of different caucuses within the Republican conference, because it won't be a case where Freedom Caucus won't vote for it, but every moderate will. I think you'll see quite a few Freedom Caucus members and quite a few moderates vote for it, but not everyone in those caucuses are going to vote for it. And so I think, I agree with you that I think it's going to be very hard for the messaging, for them to message why they voted against the bill. And I think that's going to put them in a sticky place.
They can have their reasonings all that they want, but it is tough optics. That is a hard sell to the American people, and so that would be...
think about how much happens on the House floor, and then it gets almost filtered. So by the time it gets to the average American sitting at home in Illinois, they don't know all the details. I mean, that's why we have so
They're
many
also
people.
not reading their press releases. Like,
No.
we're reading their press releases. Before I worked in Congress, I never read a press release and been like, oh, my member didn't vote for that. Let me see why.
Right. Or we were like, oh, let me go check if my member voted for it. Though I will say maybe this can be a little bit of PSA. People should, if they want to be involved in politics and they want to know what's kind of going on, if they're confused. And, some people don't have a ton of trust in the media anymore, which is fair on some level. People can go and look on their members' websites and you will find their voting record. You can go on the House clerk website and find out how they voted on each bill.
Yeah.
I mean, I dare you to go cycle through all of
It's
those.
confusing.
It's a lot, but you can, and you can see what members vote against what, and you can almost see this pattern, and you can see where these messaging bills really take a toll on the parties. And I don't know. I just think I think kind of like you said, it's gonna be a tough vote for them, and I think that leadership deciding that they don't want to whip against it is probably the right move for them, because that would be very difficult for Republican leadership to have to justify why they are telling their GOP base why they argued against it. I think that they're kind of trying to save their own skin right now.
Yeah. And I mean, I would say that those two are the biggest things that have happened on the Hill this week, what we can talk about. The last thing I want to note super quickly, just to wrap it up, is last week we saw a threat of assassination on House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffrey's life.
Which kind of came out of nowhere. I didn't even really know about it until the charges came out.
It came from a man that was prosecuted for the January 6th riots and was pardoned during Trump's sweeping pardons on day one, which got a lot of flack at the time. And I mean, this is kind of telling of the fact that they didn't go through those pardons. They just did a sweeping pardon and kind of pull out people who had previous criminal charges and separated those from people who just happened to be there in the mix. Johnson was asked about it at his press conference on Monday last week, or Tuesday.
Did President Trump make a mistake by just offering up a blanket pardon for every single person that was convicted as a result?
I don't know any of the details of this at all. I don't know who's been alleged to have been involved in this. I will say that anybody who threatens political violence against elected officials or anyone else should be have the full weight and measure of the Department of Justice on their head. I trust that that'll happen. I hope it will. We are intellectually consistent about that, obviously. I will tell you this. The violence on the left is far more prevalent than the violence on the right. Don't make me go through the list. You all know it. All of these the assassination culture that's been advanced now, this is the left in almost every case that is advancing this and not the right. So let's not make it a partisan issue. You don't want me to go there. We're just going to say anybody, any deranged individual, this has to stop.
I was a little bit taken aback because his counterpart, as much as they're fighting in the government shutdown, did have a severe assassination threat on his life just a day earlier, and so I thought that was a little bit of a wild response. I did a story on that, and then a few days later, actually, Jeffries was asked if Johnson called him after the threat came out, and he said no, which I also thought was
that's wild.
A little bit wild.
I think that's wild. I think you hit it right on the head that you can disagree politically, but the whole argument that both parties have been making, albeit for different reasons, they're almost hitting the circular point, which is violence is never the answer. Extremism needs to be denounced, and the fact that the leader, that the speaker didn't call the leader to be like, hey, I know we don't agree. I think that's a very odd political move.
There's severe threats of political violence on both sides. We had a massive show episode that talked about it. We saw the Charlie Kirk assassination, the Melissa Hortman and her husband assassination, Josh Shapiro, the governor of Pennsylvania, his house burned down. Those are both Republicans and Democrats who are facing severe acts of political violence. And so I think that both parties, their messaging really does matter. So I just wanted to obviously touch on that a little bit and didn't leave that tidbit out because it was a massive portion at the beginning of last week. But up next, we have our interview with Congresswoman Ashley Hinson.
Well, Congresswoman Hinson, thank you so much for joining Capitol Conversations today.
Great to be with you, ladies. Thanks for having me.
And you are in the state of Iowa, which I went to the University of Iowa, so I have such a soft spot for the state. And you recently announced that you are going to be running for U.S. Senate, and that is a pretty big deal for the state because we've had senators who've been there for quite some time. Senator Joni Ernst is leaving. And I just wanted to kind of go back a little bit to when you either heard Senator Ernst was thinking about leaving and when you were having these discussions with your family and with colleagues, like what kind of inspired you to run and make that decision? Because that is such a big
Yeah.
decision to make to leave the House.
Yeah, well, and I think most importantly, this decision was about my family, right? And that is at the heart of everything that I do, decision making, and what drives me to do this job in the first place. And when I first ran for the House, it was because I thought I couldn't look at my kids in the eye and say, I'm doing everything possible to make sure you're going to have a good life, that you can live the American dream. If I'm not stepping up to the plate. And so I kind of feel that same urgency here when I look at obviously this open Senate seat in Iowa. And I know I can do this work. I've built a great operation. I have a great team, both in DC and home in the district here, to make sure we're properly serving Iowans. And I also think there is so much that we need to do to, as we say, the government's like the aircraft carrier that we got to turn around in the open ocean right now. It takes a while to do that. And we have a lot of work that we need to do in the next couple of years. So I'm ready to be at the table. And my husband, Matt, and my boys, Max and Jax, are behind me. And so, yeah, we're running as a family, as a team, and making sure that we're going to help continue to serve Iowans.
Awesome.
Yeah, I have a kind of follow-up question that I just thought of that whenever you mentioned your family being on your team, I think that so we started this show to kind of show people where I'm from Texas, Rachel's from Illinois, to show people outside of the Beltway what life in DC is like. I think that sometimes a lot of podcasts and stuff like that can get caught up. Can you talk a little bit about what it's like to split your life between DC when family is so important to you?
Yeah, well, and it is hard. There are times when it's like, oh gosh, I've got to miss this thing that my kids have. But I have really prioritized my family through this process. And you can still do that. You just have to say, okay, I have to pick and choose what I'm going to. And there are things that are important. And in that case, I'm showing up at those. But it's also important for me to be at an orchestra concert or a band concert that my kids have. So there are plenty of Saturdays where they're on the roads with me, you know, out there in the mom van driving because they've got to go because their dad has something going on or
Mhm.
needs to get away and needs a break. But I have still been able to really prioritize that, especially on the weeks that I'm home. Out in DC, thank goodness for FaceTime is what I would say.
Mhm.
It allows me to stay in touch with my boys. And there've been a couple times where it's like I'm on the floor voting and I see Jax is FaceTiming me. I run back into the cloakroom, say, "Hi, honey, I'm on the floor. I'll talk to you in a little bit." Um,
Mhm.
and we do Camp Congress, so they've actually come out to see what I do every day. So they understand. It's like they're not missing a party. They're missing me working from like 7 in the morning until 10 o'clock at night.
Mhm.
And I think it's interesting too because the House is obviously right now in this shutdown period, and a lot of things are not happening. Frankly,
Yeah.
we wrote a story about recently about just how it feels like Groundhog Day, and it's just the same
Yeah.
stuff over and over again. And I feel like in DC that's true, but in the districts, I feel like you and other Republicans are doing a lot of different things a day. And for you, especially on this Senate run, how are you balancing? And just in general, balancing this Senate campaign where you're trying to go to all the counties, but then also still doing the work for your district as well.
Yeah,
Mhm.
well, and I am still a congresswoman for Iowa's second district until the end of next year. And so I will continue to do my job. And it's very frustrating that the government is shut down because, number one, I voted to keep it open because my constituents rely on a number of government services. And right now, they can't get access to those. My staff can't get answers for constituent service from these agencies. So whether it's the IRS or the VA or any of these agencies that our constituents need help with, that's all come to a screeching halt. And so that's very frustrating. So we remain open. We're trying to help our people. And so I continue to do the work in the district. Just was out at a ribbon cutting, kind of, I guess you call it a groundbreaking for one of the community project funding requests that I was able to secure for Clayton County for affordable housing. I was there last week. We presented a veteran's family with his medals from World War II. So we are still out in the district serving our constituents. And then when I have some free time, I'm out on the road doing the other 99 counties that I have to do now. I'm 26 counties done so far. I think I've put over 2,500 miles on my minivan since early September. But I'm going everywhere, earning every vote, and having really important conversations with everyone. And interestingly enough, the government shutdown, while it comes up, you know, people are more concerned about, are we reforming government? Are we doing what President Trump asked you to go to Washington, D.C. and do? Are we securing the border? Are we deporting dangerous illegals? Are we keeping boys out of girls' sports? Those are the things that I continue to hear about as I'm out on the trail. And luckily, I can report back to them thanks to President Trump's leadership, thanks to Congress, we're keeping taxes low. We're focused on protecting Americans and putting Americans first.
Yeah. I kind of have a more fun question about the campaign. I've talked to some House members who have run for Senate, and I do this thing on the Hill. I do outfit of the day videos, so we'll have to do one. But I've, through doing like fashion and politics, I've noticed that when House members run for Senate, they notice a difference in people kind of commenting on what they wear or changing their wardrobe. Have you experienced that at all? I have a really big interest in this like difference in constituents caring about the fashion, the higher office that you run for.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you've
that's
done a lot of
interesting.
that.
Yeah, well, I would say this that I certainly have a different wardrobe for Washington, D.C. than I do in Iowa because I
Mhm.
think D.C. is business, right? It's a business setting. I wear a suit most of the time out in D.C. And when I'm back home in the district, I can wear jeans and a blazer most of the time. That's pretty much my
Mhm.
uniform. That's what I'm wearing today. You can't see the bottom, but
Mhm.
it's I want to be comfortable, but I still want to respect the constituents that I serve and try and look nice. So I think that's going to be my approach always is always to match where you're at. Now I'm not going to wear a three-piece suit to go tour a cattle barn, right? That doesn't match and doesn't
Yeah.
go. And so I think it's important to also balance that, right? It doesn't look right if
Totally.
you're in heels and a suit in a
Mhm.
dairy barn
Yeah.
Yeah,
in
I think
Iowa.
it's
Yeah.
so interesting that DC is still so business professional. My mom, obviously, growing up, I remember her in all business professional clothes, and we're from
Mhm.
Texas, and she's made a big switch to business casual because that's just so normal now in all the states with any profession. But DC is just trucking along with the business professional.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's interesting. There's no dress code for women, right? And for men
Yeah.
on the
Yeah.
floor,
Yes.
there
Totally.
are specifics as to what you have to wear, but not for women. So DC can kind of be like a fashion show, as I've seen, and
Yes.
I don't subscribe
Totally.
to any of the services that I think a lot of people, like staffers on the Hill, might.
That's what I
I know
do.
some of the ladies in my office do, I know,
Yeah, that's what I do.
but I buy all my clothes on like eBay and Mercari and Poshmark, and so I'm a big thrifter, and
Mhm.
so that's how I try to dress myself because I don't want to spend thousands of dollars on clothes.
So
I
expensive.
I get suits for like 20 bucks a pop and then have them dry cleaned, so it's a
Yep.
pretty good deal.
Yeah,
That's
I'm
awesome.
I am an Amazon girly. Like everyone on the Hill knows that I just always have these Amazon fits because I'm like I cannot spend so much money. And then Lauren and I always talk about how we need to get like a joint Newly account just for all the clothes that we want to buy.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's again, this is about respect for my constituents. I want to make sure that I look nice and respect the office,
Hmm.
right? Dress for the office, dress for the job you
Totally.
have. I think that's important. And but yeah, I refuse to spend thousands of dollars. I'm a big thrifter, and I think that's very Iowan of me, I guess you'd say. But I was raised pretty thrifty, and my
Yeah.
mom always we went to the thrift stores and donated stuff out, and then brought it back from the
Hmm.
thrift store. So that's how I grew up with that kind of mindset. So I still do that now, even though I'm thrifting suits.
I love that. I think that thrifting is such an underrated way to be creative. I think that people
Mhm.
undermine like how creative you have to be to thrift. And I love thrifting. Now I do a rental service, which is also, I feel like, an easier way to save money, like thrifting. But I thrifting was so fun for me because it was like honestly a creative outlet.
Yeah. Well, and I'll say this, it's pretty fun. Some of my lady colleagues in the house know that I have this habit that I like to thrift and I like to thrift online and put in low bids and see if I can get them. And so
Mhm.
now I've actually done some shopping for them. So they'll tell me their
That's
size
so
and kind of
fun.
what brand they
That's
like. And I'll
so
say,
fun.
so yeah, so sometimes I know I bought a couple of jackets for like Dr. Fox, Virginia Fox, and
She loves thrifting.
she'll give me the cash and I, reimburse, she reimburses me, I buy them and I bring them out to DC. So I
That's
guess
so cool.
that's fun. But yeah,
I
I mean, I
love
think
that.
it goes to the fact you still want to look professional, you want to respect the
Mhm.
office, but that doesn't mean you have to spend a ton of money on clothes.
And kind of going off of that, just like that camaraderie that you were sharing, like the house is so large and being able,
Mhm.
I feel like, not only as a woman to probably meet with other Republican women, that's probably so great, but just in general, like it's just a huge crowd. And I'm sure you're not friends with everybody, but to have like a nice, huge group of friends, I feel like when you move over to the Senate is just known to be a little bit more like quiet and refined,
Yeah.
and everyone's not as chatty. Like, what
Mhm.
kind of are you excited to bring, like house tendencies, are you excited to bring to the Senate to kind of reinvigorate it?
Well, what's exciting to me is that a lot of my House colleagues are now in the Senate. So
Yes.
like Jim Banks and Mark Wayne
Like
Mullen and
yep.
Ted
Yeah.
Budd and like some of these people who have served in the House are now, serving in the Senate. And so I have already some people who I've worked well with and have good relationships with over in the Senate. Katie Britt, she's my girl. I love her dearly. And so I'm so excited to be able to serve with her. And actually, when she first got out to DC, myself and Julia Letlow and Stephanie Bice and Katie got together for like a girls' wine night to just, you do
I
need to
love
talk
that.
and you need to
Yeah.
have conversations about what's happening back at home. Katie told us all about her walking group. She has this gal group that she is still,
That's
it's
so
her friends
fun.
from back home that she still gets up and goes walking in the morning with.
That's
And
so
so
fun.
it's good to have a core group of friends because even though we're not living there, we're still there and we need to work together and having those relationships is really important. And I've also worked with Stephanie Bice and Erin Houchin. We put together probably once a quarter, we try to have kind of a ladies' dinner to try to talk to our colleagues. So, we kind of put a wide swath of invites out, and whoever can come comes. And it's not necessarily, set in fast stone that you have to be there, but it's more like, hey, let's unload, let's have some conversations, what's going on at home, and as women, we do need to stick together.
I'm curious what about the House you are going to miss if you are elected. Obviously, it's just right across the way in the Capitol, but what is something that you're going to miss about the House, and what's something that you're looking forward to by being in the Senate?
Yeah. Well, I think, first of all, I'll start with what I'm looking forward to. I'm really looking forward to serving with Senator Grassley. While I'm obviously looking to replace Joni at this point, I thought I would be serving with her maybe at some point, but I'm really looking forward to serving with him because he is so wise. He's seen all the fights in DC. He knows so much, the institutional knowledge that man has. My motto kind of is if Senator Grassley gets really upset about something, I get upset about something because he knows which fights to pick. And so I have the utmost respect for him. So I'm really looking forward to serving with him and having more time to work on things that I think are really important. In the House, you have the scrappy every 2-year fight, which actually I will miss about the House. I love that part. I love the urgency that comes with the House and that immediate responsiveness that we feel in the House. I think that I might miss in the Senate, but I think having more time to kind of work on some of these really key issues that we're going to be dealing with over the next 6 to 10 years as we, again, try to right the ship of the government, I think that's going to be really important. So I'm kind of looking forward to that, and I'm also going to miss that like every 2-year fight. But yeah, I've been running every 2 years since 2016. So had the state house races before, and then in Congress. So I think my husband might be a little relieved that I'm not running every 2 years.
Yeah.
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 Awesome. Well, I think that was all of the questions that we had. We really appreciate you joining us today.
Yes.
Yeah,
Thanks for
thanks so much
having
for your
me.
time.
Yeah, it'll be a fun year ahead, and ready to get out there and run hard. And yeah, I think I'm going to eat a lot of ice cream and drink a lot of coffee as I make my way through Iowa. So it'll be fun.
And there's no other way to do it. That's the
Yeah,
best
that
way
sounds
to
like
do
the
it.
best way.
Yeah, it'd be
And
rude
say-
not to.
Yes, and say hello to Iowa City as you're heading over
Well.
there. I miss it dearly.
Yeah, I was just there the other night. We had the Johnson County Republican Women event right by Kinnick Stadium. So yeah, we were just there last week or earlier this week. So
Oh my gosh, so fun.
yep.
Well, good luck with everything. Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
good luck.
Thanks, ladies.
Thank you.
Yes, have a good one.
Welcome to our Q&A section, as I always say, my favorite part. And this is going to be a kind of fun question to give everybody just a break from the heaviness of
Yes.
shutdown and assassination attempts. So this is a fun one that we got from Jen, and she says, what are the food options in the Capitol? Which I feel like is a niche topic that maybe a lot of
Very
people don't know
niche.
about.
I think it's fun to talk about, though. My favorite thing to point people to is in the Senate, in the Dirksen CAF. They have, on Thursdays, is what they call a chickle, and it's a crispy chicken pickle sandwich, and it comes with chips. It is absolutely
I've heard
delicious.
Lauren talk about this, I swear to
Probably
God,
100 times.
since she started working with me.
It's
like, it
so
has been
good.
brought up, and I'm like, what is this damn
No,
sandwich?
I have. Rachel and I are gonna go next week, and we'll do a review on the fly. So
Yes.
come back for that. But I mean, it is fun. I think that working on Capitol Hill is similar to being in college. Like, you and all your friends that work or go to school together are in your respective office, or like in college, it was classes, and you
Yeah.
can meet up at the cafeteria to get lunch.
It is
and
fun.
It is so fun because I get to see my friends that I don't necessarily get to see on the weekdays because it's busy.
Yeah.
Whenever we meet up for our chickles on Thursdays.
frickin'
So I
chickle.
think that that's my favorite food option. I would also love to give Starbucks, which is previously Dunkin', still a little bit sad about that. A
I'm
shout out,
sad.
but those two are my go-tos, and the Starbucks is now on the house side in Longworth, so those are my shout outs. I feel like you have a couple.
I have a couple. I think my favorite one is Taco Tuesday.
I knew she was gonna say that.
Yes, everyone loves a Taco Tuesday, and I always get the taco bowls. And right now, Congress and the Capitol is kind of going through renovations right now, and so if you are visiting and traveling to DC, you can eat not only in a cafeteria. Well, actually, you can't right now because it's the
Closed
shutdown.
with the- yeah.
But when we're not shut down, you can eat in the Capitol, and they have a couple places in the House buildings where most people work, and so you will not go far before you run into a taco bowl, and so that's always my favorite. I'm a Chipotle lover at heart, so anything that looks like and walks like Chipotle, I will eat. Those are my favorites. And then I think my other one is Cups in Dirksen.
Yes, the sandwiches.
The sandwiches are great. I love their paninis. I think that they are super fresh. And the
Yes.
people who work there are just frickin' machines. They work through the shutdown.
They don't get paid
They don't
as
get
well.
paid.
Most food in the House and the Senate is closed because of the shutdown, despite I think the cafeterias, like all of the like little shops, like pop-up shops,
Yes.
but Cups is working through.
They're working through, and they are just wonderful people. They're so sweet. They always have a smile on their face, and like people always comment that if Cups staffers were running the government, we would have been open in 2 days, and I believe it.
They cycle that in and out. I love Cups. I love the employees that work there. I love the chicken Caesar wrap is great there. The paninis.
Anything with chicken,
Yes.
Yum.
Yeah. Well, now I'm hungry.
and I'm gonna go get food. So,
And that's a wrap. Thanks for watching Capital Conversations with Rachel and Lauren.
and as always, make sure to like and subscribe, and watch our show, and listen to us on Spotify. We are everywhere. We want to hear from you, and make sure to read us at washingtonexaminer.com.